What if you could go back in time and you knew more before you made those big decisions in life? What would you do differently? What advice would have helped you then and now? Welcome to Know Before You Owe podcast. I am Jim Black, and I've been lucky to have gone from being a market maker on Wall Street, helping big decisions be made with key executives at companies, to now being a trusted advisor for large financial real estate transactions for families. In my career, I've met some of the most incredible people along the way, and we're lucky to have them share their experiences with us on this podcast. These are top experts in their fields, great leaders in work and in life. Guests will share their life experiences, wisdom, and insights that you can leverage in your own decisions in life. Thank you, and please stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, and I'm excited to help you know more before you owe. Please subscribe to learn more, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Hi, it's Jim Black, and welcome to another edition of Know Before You Owe. Today, we have Kevin Amolsch on the phone, and he is with Pine Financial Group. Kevin, thank you for being on our show today. We appreciate it and look forward to learning more about commercial and residential lending and all the history you have of your experience based out of Colorado. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Jim. I am so excited to be here, despite the little bit of difficulties we had right before you hit the record button. This is going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you on, and it's great to get perspectives outside of California, where I live, to really get an idea of other ways to make investments in yourself, right? We all want to make ourselves better. The whole purpose of the show is to give tidbits to people to listen and hopefully get something out of this 20-minute segment to really learn about a way that they can implement something in their own lives to know more before they make a big decision. And I love doing this because I learn something every time.
That's fantastic. I hope I can do that. I'm confident I can.
Right on. Cool. So you're based in Colorado. Have you lived there your whole life? Are you from?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I was born in Denver, grew up in a suburb, and out of high school, I was like, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm so sick of school, but I don't want my career to fall off a cliff either. So I joined the Army and went to train in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then I got stationed in Colorado. So I think I'm supposed to be here.
Well, thank you so much for your service. I did not know that you're in the military. Thank you for what you do for our country, and I appreciate that. And that's veterans need to be more appreciated for all the stuff you guys go through. And thank you so much for that.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. It was pretty easy for me, but I appreciate you saying that.
So you come back, you're stationed pretty much back home. And what was it that drove you into real estate? What was your burning itch? What was it that stood out to you as the reason why you got into what you did?
Yeah, Jim, I'm just like so many other people. You start reading books, right? And I had a little savings account because you don't spend a lot of money when you're in the military. And I picked up that little purple Bible, so many people call it. They live their financial lives by the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. It's such a simple book, but it's kind of all started there. And then expert after expert after expert, real estate. This is how more millionaires are made. It's not a guarantee. I mean, it's more of a guarantee than like the startup thing, right? So it's like, well, I don't need it to be super fast. I just want it to be for sure. So I started focusing on real estate and I started buying properties, and I was buying 1-2 houses a month while I was in college, after I got out of the Army, and while I was working. And so anybody could do this. It just takes a little bit of effort.
That's cool. That's awesome. And then I'd imagine over time you keep building your knowledge base, and you start probably getting into more and more creative things. What can you give me a story about one of your most exciting lessons you've learned in your career? Like, was there a transaction or a house you've owned or an investment you made that really reminds you of why you love what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of bad ones too, but the good one, Jim, is as I was buying 1 or 2 houses a month, what I learned in that process is that your deal structure, the way you negotiate with the seller of a property, all has to do with the funding. How are you going to finance it? So I really love the hunt and finding the project. So I fell in love with the financing side, and we'll probably get to that, but that's how I got into the private money lending space. But as far as something that gets me excited, when I hear you say that, I think about my very first lease option deal, and I probably screwed it all up. I tried to negotiate everything on the phone, which I would never do today, but I was just cold calling sellers out of the back then it was the newspaper. So I was just like picking up the phone and making phone calls. And I got a lady, her name was Deborah, that wanted to, she had a bunch of rental properties and she wanted more of a secure tenant, someone that's going to, promise to make the payments every month. And she was willing to accept a little bit less in rent for that. So I was able to negotiate a deal with her where I leased the property. It was $1,400 a month is what I paid her, and I think I rented it for 16. I subleased it out for 16, locked in a purchase price, and as the value of that went up, that's how I made my money on that one. But that very first lease option just got me so excited, like, holy cow, this really does work. The books are telling the truth. The truth.
Nice. Yeah. And like every market's different, right? Every situation's unique. And that's what I love about this industry that we're both in is like, you're there for life events. You're there for people having good and bad things that happen to them. And we need to be there to prepare to help them and show them the tools to get them to their goals. And everyone has different objectives, right? We all have different beliefs, different values, different long-term plans. And that's exciting that you're able to kind of use, you're learning by doing, right? That's a good way of, I think, experiencing a career. That's awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit to talked about financing. So knowing before you owe, when I think of that, I think of my pocketbook. I think of things that are important to be aware of when you're making big decisions. It probably is good to make sure that you understand the financial meanings before making a big decision. So did you start out with the residential element and then work into commercial and other things, or do you just start out kind of in one avenue of that?
Yeah, so I was having some success as a real estate investor. I went full time fairly young. I bought my first house when I was turning 21, and then I just kind of grew from there. And I had a portfolio of over 50 properties, and I started to get recruited for being a mortgage broker. And because I loved the financing side, I went ahead and started working for a company. It was just traditional, conventional loans. What I learned through that process is that is extremely difficult business because you have no control. So I was approving people for their dream home. They went out and found it, got the contract, and then guidelines changed from the pre-approval till now when they found their property. And I had to make that phone call, like, dude, you don't qualify anymore. This is your dream. I'm sorry, and that was just really frustrating and tough for me. So I was like, I got to get more control here. So that's when I started raising private capital and loaning out private capital because now I can underwrite it, common sense underwriting, and then I can control the underwriting and the servicing of it. So all the payments come into me, and any construction draws, we handle all of that in house.
That's cool. So you bring up kind of a niche, right? Or a niche, whatever you want to call it. Construction loans, right? So a lot of people right now probably don't know a lot about construction loans, and that it may be a good solution to stay in your property and remodel it, or maybe you find a really cool piece of land that you want to build your dream home on. Can you share a little bit more about how you go about finding targets for that? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So when you say remodel a house that you're currently in, that's so far outside of my world. So we talked a little bit about the licensing. I do business purpose loans only. I do not get into the consumer world. So anytime someone lives in the property, I can't touch that. Now, there is some fantastic options for that, though. I know there's like FHA loans and there's like 203K and there's some other types of rehab loans out there. I'm just not the expert in that. If you're going to buy something to fix it up because you want to resell it like you see on TV, that's the kind of deals that we would fund.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Awesome. And what's the average turn time you find on these properties? What is how does that work?
Yeah, that's pretty fast. I mean, look, the faster you can get in and out of a project, the more money you're going to make. So real estate investors typically are trying to get out of the projects quickly. So we'll write a loan for say 9 months. That's our typical term, but we're seeing them pay off in under 6. So we're like between 5 and 6. And that's mostly because of supply chain and contractor labor issues because houses are still selling.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Good to know. And are you seeing activity pick up? I know we're in March in 2023. Are you seeing things pick up? Is it a cyclical part of this year? What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It really seems to me like 6 to 6.5% mortgage rates on the owner aux side. and then you're going to see activity. When you're fixing and flipping, typically you're going to flip it to someone who's going to occupy the property. So your client or your buyer is the owner occ. So we're really concerned about their loan. And they're very rate sensitive, as you know, Jim. And rates are bouncing all over the place right now because the Fed's trying to get control of inflation and the stock market's moving all over the place. Now we have T-bills and treasuries and all of this that is taking banks down. So all of this creates sensitivity. And when you see rates start to go up, then the demand, it's noticeable. The demand will go down. But when rates come down to 6.5%, 6%, something like that, then you'll see property start moving again.
So affordability is an important part of your job too, right? Like I'd imagine anything you're doing, you're making sure someone qualifies for the long run, right? Because sometimes people can get themselves in a tough situation if they're not careful on not thinking long-term planning. So do you do that? How do you go about that in terms of planning ahead? Do you look at someone's personal goals? How do you go about that process?
Yeah. So you remember our client is the fix and flipper or the real estate investor. So yeah, of course we're going to look at their goals and see what we can do to help them accomplish that. The affordability is not as important as you might think for us on the lending side. I would absolutely be focused on that if I was the person buying and doing the rehab. But look, there's buyers in every price point, and we're talking about interest rates. Interest rate sensitivity is more on the lower end because those are the buyers that they need loans to buy your property. Very unusual, Jim. I don't know if you've seen this in California, but in Colorado, you get to 2 million or higher, and these things are flying off the shelf. These are cash buyers from California.
It is wild. Yeah, it's wild. I'm seeing a big migration from people making big life decisions right now and deciding that it's going to be shifting over to they're shifting their mindset to get out of California to go to other places where they can build their dream home, their beautiful home, that kind of stuff. So it's really awesome to see that for sure. So.
Yeah, and they're coming here. I mean, and they have money. Y'all have money.
Cool. Yeah, they do have a lot of money. And again, sometimes it's a perceived discount from where they're coming from. And those local people might say, oh my God, it's actually a premium. These people are crazy to pay as much money. And again, it just comes down to someone's objectives, right? You may value a big piece of property more than a big home, or a view versus not, or what good schools versus no schools. Those things all play a role in the way we look at things, which is really interesting. And I love that part of this job.
Yeah, the affordability is such a great topic. And Colorado, Denver specifically, is the most expensive non-coastal town in the country. But it's non-coastal. You get out to California, that's more expensive, right? Less affordable.
It is pretty wild. I live about 2 blocks from the beach. I'm very lucky where I live in Santa Cruz County. And it is wild to think about price per square footage. A lot of people use that equation to determine these things. And if you're buying a condo or something like that, it's mind-blowing to see how people may be paying even more price per square foot than not on being in a condo in Colorado versus on the beach in California. So very strange. So
we'll see if that's I'm sure it will because of the ocean, of course, but you got to believe demand goes down. You have government that's somewhat pushing people away, and affordability is a real thing. So I wonder how long or sustainable that really is.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So what are you excited about looking forward, say, a year from now? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so a year from now, I think we're still going to be in the similar place we are now. I guess get out my crystal ball if that's what you're asking. I think you're going to see inflation will come down. It already is. But interest rates will probably be pretty similar to what we're seeing now. So I think the good news and what I'm looking forward to is some stability. I think things will start to settle down. And then that will bring confidence back, right? People are a little nervous right now. But when confidence comes back, people will be more willing to buy properties again. And I know you talk a lot about this on your show, but just be smart about when you're borrowing the money, right? But
absolutely. That's awesome. Well, so I do hope that as more time goes on, more inventory comes on, people build more homes, people use your programs to do fix and flips more often. It's just, we need to create confidence for people, right? We need to make sure people are understanding that it is smart to buy a house. It is smart to invest in yourself. And like you mentioned earlier on the show, people that invest in stocks or other things like that get a piece of paper, and they don't have a physical, tangible benefit. In certain countries, I've been to places like Panama and Ecuador and other places like that. And some people just invest their money physically in a building and don't even finish building the property because they're more concerned about currency runs or inflation or deflation in the value of money. We're very lucky to be in one of the strongest economies, if not the strongest in the world, with the dollar being really the backing behind most countries that have confidence in our ability to regulate money and be fair and hopefully almost treat the money like gold, like it has been in the past. I know we're not in the gold standard anymore, which is a whole different conversation, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's exciting. So tell me about what states you like to operate in. Do you stay local in Colorado, or do you like to work in other parts of the country? Are you licensed to go anywhere? I'm
Yeah, that's
always
a good
curious
question.
about that.
There's two sides to our business, Jim, because what we do, the nature of our business, we bring in private capital from private investors and we loan that out to real estate developers and real estate investors. So we have our private money investors that are looking for a passive income, passive return secured by real estate at low loan to values. And then we have our fix and flippers. Now, I can tell you when you ask the question, where geographically, where are we? Well, on the passive investor side, we can go pretty much anywhere. We got approved with the SEC to offer that fund publicly. So we can bring in investors from all over the place. And then as far as lending it out, that's where it gets a little bit tricky because we have to be very, very careful and safe with this money. And we've got a 15-year track record now and zero losses and sub 2% default rate and all of these positive things. It's huge. But the reason for that is because we're so careful, right? So we don't go anywhere on the lending side. We are geographically focused there. So if there's a problem, we can handle it. So we loan in Minnesota and Colorado as our two primary markets. We do some business in Wisconsin, so we're comfortable in Wisconsin, up in Milwaukee and right across the border on from the Twin Cities. And then we're loaning out in Washington D.C. as well.
Cool. And are there different programs you offer in those areas? Like, how does that work?
There's a couple different loans. We have acquisition loans and we have rehab loans. So it's go to the website. I would say it's a little bit trickier, but so let's say we do an acquisition loan in Minnesota. We do offer this in Minnesota, for example. We'll finance 90% of the purchase and 90% of the construction.
Okay.
So it's really just a 10% down of cost.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really a good way to leverage.
Yeah, it's great. And we're capping that at 70% of the completed value. So we're still staying at a low loan to value. And it requires our borrowers to do quality projects, right? If you really want to keep your down payment to 10%, you're going to need to find a good quality deal that you could fix and flip and make money on. So that's a little bit cheaper. We also do a 100% rehab loan where we finance 100% of the purchase, 100% of the rehab. That too is capped at 70% of the completed value. A little bit more expensive. And in both cases, we're handling the construction money. So we're come out and inspect the property. We're doing construction draws just like a construction loan, just to make sure that you're doing the rehab as you said you're going to. So those are really our two primary loans. We do some commercial stuff as well. We're going to do repositioning a commercial asset. So I'll give you an example. Let's say one that was kind of an exciting one we worked on. It was a Safeway building that they chopped up into like 4 different suites, and there's a swim school and a gym. And
they repurposed the building. Is that what you call value add, or what did you call that?
Yeah, we call it a value add. You're adding value to a property. Everything we do is value add. So same as a fix and flip, right? You're putting a new kitchen in and selling it for more money. But this was cool because they put a swim school in an old Safeway.
So wild. That's so crazy to think about. Like, that's amazing to think about. Wow, that's so what? Yeah, so keep going, please.
Yeah, I mean, and so that was one example of repositioning a commercial asset, and you're starting to see a lot more of that. Office conversions to apartments, hotels being converted to apartments. We do a lot of industrial that are converting to small bay. Look, it's hard to rent out a giant warehouse, but if you could go to 5, 7, maybe 10,000 square foot suites, then you have your painters and your plumbers, and you have all these people that need a little office space with some storage. And now you open up the pool of tenants, so you're adding value that way.
So is it almost like, would you call it more like a hub? People are looking for more hubs to do work, kind of like the old days of building out like strip mall stuff? Are people like looking more to do is it more of an infill thing? Is that what you call that? Or
For on the so infill, when I think of infill, I'm typically you're thinking of residential, and you're talking about an established neighborhood. So whether there's a vacant lot or you're tearing a house down to build something new, it's already an established area. Otherwise, you'd be developing a neighborhood, right? So when I hear infill, I think about that. I guess you could have infill in the commercial. You just don't hear that term in the commercial world so much.
I'm always curious because everyone has different definitions too across the country and whatnot. So
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
Cool. Okay. And okay, so that's really interesting because you can take something that's not looking like what it is today and be able to change that and move that around. And that's really cool. I like that.
That's how investors make money. I mean, you talk about stocks and investing in stocks, and we're talking about investing in properties here. Look, you can't force appreciation on a stock. I can't buy a stock and force it to go up in value, but I can do that in real estate.
Totally. Wild, crazy. Well, I'm really appreciative of all the perspectives you're bringing. And how can we get a hold of you? Is it best to set up a meeting, consultative meeting? Are you like a Zoom guy? Do you do a lot of spreadsheets? How do you work with your clients? Because that would be great to see how that works.
Yeah, so I work mostly on the investor side. So like if you want to invest with us, that you'll probably get a hold of me that way. I have a couple people that help me with that also. Borrowers, if you're a real estate investor looking to convert a Safeway, for example, you probably work with someone else on my team. But no matter what, the best way to reach
specialize in things. You guys specialize in different approaches and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean we're small still. But we have 130 million under management, something
That's
like
huge.
that.
That's
So
great. That's a lot of money to help families. That's great.
Yeah, it's a little bit too much for me to do all by myself. So I had to build a team to help with that.
Cool.
To
Awesome.
answer your question, the best way is our website, pinefinancialgroup.com.
I'm writing that down right now, pinefinancialgroup.com. Perfect. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that we put this all on our podcast to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. And I would love to talk to you more personally about things that I'm involved with, because I'm always curious about trying to find ways to add value to my clients and be a difference maker and make sure that we can help with creative and custom things that exist in the world. So that's awesome.
Yeah, Jim, I'd love to talk to you about that. California is a little bit tough to do business in, as you know, but yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. I do have one other website I would like to give out, if that's okay. Yeah, so I wrote a couple of reports. We write those to help people as much as possible, and we give those away for free. But one is about the economy because, look, we're going through some tough times right now, and everyone's worried about 2008, the repeat. Look, I don't think it's going to be a repeat, and there's tons of reasons why I believe that. But I wrote a report about that and how it more compares to 1990 than 2008. And then also, if you're looking for passive income, and you want to do private lending, whether you work with us or anybody else, you got to be safe about it because it is much safer than Wall Street. I believe that wholeheartedly, but you have to make the right decisions. You have to underwrite properly and you have to service the loans properly. So we wrote a report about that in case anyone wants to go out there and do it on their own so they don't get themselves in trouble, because I hate getting those phone calls, Jim, when someone calls me and says, look, I loaned in junior position and now they're defaulted on their first position. I don't have any money. I can't take out the first. Well, now you have no collateral at all and you're going to lose everything.
100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree. And it's so good that you're spending time with these people to really make sure that they understand what they're getting into and give them enough time to research it all, for sure.
It's a fantastic investment, but you can make mistakes, right? Just like anything. So we wrote a report about how to stay safe in that as well. So both those reports are free. Thepinereport.com. So it's thepinereport.com.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Kevin, and I'm so honored to have you on my show and looking forward to building a rapport with you across the country, because people in California are starting to migrate out of California. They love the weather, but they hate the taxes and some of the other elements to our area that don't make a whole lot of sense to people in a lot of ways. And sometimes when your family's moved on or your kids have moved out or your grandkids are across the country, it's just time to make a move and make a difference. And I really appreciate your time again. And thank you again for being on our show. And that's another edition of Know Before You Owe. I hope you got some tidbits from Kevin about ways that he can help you with your big decisions around a lot of different ways to fix things up, to be involved with commercial loans and properties. And thank you again for your service to our country, Kevin. It's an honor to have you and I appreciate it and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Jim.
Take care, guys.